Many thanks for staying with us here on MX24 TV. My name is Kwabena Chenche Hinibuating. This is Opposing Views, and like I keep saying, the show is live on all our digital platforms, Facebook, Twitter, also streaming live on YouTube at MX24GH, that's the handle. So please do well to tell a friend to tell another friend that the conversation on education as exists in the various manifestos and perhaps amended manifestos of the two major political parties. Today we want to place our focus on that, and I'm very privileged to have quite a number of people join us for this very conversation. Let me start with two of the persons who have already joined. Let me start with the gentleman sitting right next to me in studio, in the person of Ni Amadi. He's a very respected educationist in Ghana. Mr. Amadi, thank you so much for agreeing to join us today.
Thank you very much.
Right, so he'll be with us in studio. He will help us fact check a lot of the things that are going to be said, and then also give us a proper perspective as to what it is that you see. Not everything which is free, as some say, is good enough for you, and a lot of people also say some will give you things with the left and take it with the right. Whichever ways, he'll be in a position to help us understand really what the situation is as regards all the free things we are hearing this time round. Again, actually, he's already joined us now. Mr. Michael Nsua is chairman of the Ghana Education Service Council. He was former Director General of the Ghana Education Service. He's joining us via Zoom. Mr. Nsua, good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us today. So if you can hear me, good afternoon and thanks for joining us. Let me start by first speaking to you. Can you hear me now, sir? Okay. I think you may have to unmute. You may have to unmute yourself, Mr. Nsoa, so that we can hear you when you speak. If that is done now, Mr. Michael Nsua will join us with his views on quite a number of things. But while our technical guys work on that, let me start with our gentleman in studio now, Ni Amadi. Mr. Amadi, I know you've followed keenly a number of the things that have been said so far. Have you studied the two manifestos so far? The two major manifestos, particularly with the various things that have been said as regards education?
Yes, I've taken a look into it.
Great. So that's fine. But even before we delve into that, let me start by talking about free SHS and all of the conversations that have come with free SHS. Moments ago, or should I say a few years ago, there were promises of free secondary education. Some said it's not possible, some said we'll do it, some said we'll do it progressively, blah, 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 all around. And we have come to this point where it is being implemented. We've had people raise issues with how it is even being implemented and all. Let's start by, in fact, I want to bring back that conversation. Who brought free SHS? Who introduced it? Is it the NPP or the NDC?
I mean, you would want to go back to our constitution and look at what the constitution says. It talks about progressively free education. Okay, which means that there is the framers of the constitution have in mind to progressively make our education free. Okay. And also in that same constitution, the second part of it talks about the private participation. Okay. So that in order to provide education for our citizenry or for people resident in Ghana, there ought to be the combination of public and private participation. And that ought to be done step by step, as in any successful project that you want to undertake. Okay, so that there are things that there are resources that ought to be present. There are resources that ought to be available in order for education to be progressive. Okay, and that resources includes human and material. When you talk about human resources, you talk about the teachers, both teaching assistants, and then administrative support. So that, and even gardeners, etc. And all people involved in the provision of educational resources. And then the second part is what you want to call the material resources. So in the material resources, you want to talk about classrooms, you want to talk about library, you want to talk about canteen, okay, where students will eat. And then you also want to even talk about health, which in many cases we live it. Okay? So once you have these things in place, and we all know what it takes to put infrastructure in place, though it does not take forever, it takes some time. And you have to match that to what resources are available to you. And it's a leadership call. So a leader would say, I want to do 1, 2, 3, so that different people will have different amenities as we go along. And other would say, I want to put everything into one thing. Okay. So to say that who brought free SHS, unless you're using the word and you want to define it, and usually people will define words to suit their purpose. But in the broad scheme of things, in a wider thinking, as an educationist, I would not say that any particular person brought it.
I see.
Because it cannot be in vacuum. Okay, but if you bring it in the political definitions, which I would have preferred the political parties to do themselves. Unfortunately, they are not here, but I'm sure when they join, they'll be able to articulate that properly. Then you would say that the NPP made it massively free. Okay?
So
in that same
on block for the NPP.
Yes.
The NDC was quite selective because they were using a progressive approach.
Yes, they were using a progressive approach. And you see, if you go to the literature, different scholars have argued differently, and I wouldn't get too scholarly with this, even though it's education. But different scholars have argued differently with educational provision. Some have argued that if you have 100 cities, would you rather train 2 people with the 100 cities that you have, so they can reach the very top and provide for the masses? Or you spread the 100 cities into 100 people and keep them at certain level? And for me, what I've seen done with our education so far is about training mass people without seeking their utmost interest. Okay? Because what's the essence of finishing secondary school without being able to access the university? If there are alternative means, then that is good. If you go to developed countries like the UK, the US, and other places, dropping out of high school does not become the end of one's career. I mean, consider the Tesco's, the Sainsbury's, the big supermarket chains. They have their own colleges where, after high school, they enroll people in. They enroll people into those schools, train them about retailing, and then they go into the job. They start from the shop floor in Tesco and go through the ranks to become managers. Okay, so there are those things in place. But here, what do we see? I see.
So it's very interesting you make reference to all of these things in your initial brief on free SHS. And I'm glad now I think we have... You've heard the 2 politicians do their thing, what they do best. I know a lot of people raised issues with the way and manner in which it was being implemented. There were issues of overcrowding. There were issues of, how do we call it, even feeding at some points and the like. There were a few challenges. But all in all, would you say this has been, a fairly well-run system?
Thank you. The joy is that today in Ghana, everybody embraces the free SHS, so that it has come to be with us. Whoever takes the reign of government going forward, and probably for the rest of our stay under this earth, in this country called Ghana, we're going to have free SHS. So it's a good thing, and everybody has embraced it. You see, but you cannot only leave the policy being good in isolation when you do not go into the things that makes education quality, and also the resources that has been invested there. I mean, under the previous government, you saw the construction of E-blocks,
yes,
which is the community day schools.
Yeah.
And I mean, many educationists of high repute, both in scholarly and in educational entrepreneurs, have praised that step. So that even if you go to America, if you go to the UK, those are the practices there. That people go to school in their community and then get back home. You know, it saves cost. What do we see today? I mean, the previous government started building these blocks. Part of the things we heard is that some of the places were remote. Extremely remote, yeah, to the effect that it cannot be accessed. But the thing is, what does it take? I mean, today we see in this government giving buses to schools. Okay? If you go to UK, where some of us had opportunity to school, I mean, our accommodation is somewhere, our academic site is somewhere. So the university runs a shuttle system where it goes through major points in the city. Okay, and I'm speaking specifically to the city of Liverpool. Okay, so that you know the bus shuttle times. You join the bus, you go to the academic site. When you finish lectures, the bus brings you back, and there was nothing wrong with it. So if we had one bus that can shuttle and take students to school, let's say between 5 and 7 o'clock, I mean, what is wrong with that?
I see.
Will that have cost us more than what we saw?
I see.
So the point I'm saying is that we shouldn't have put such huge amount of national resources in that project to waste. I mean, 4 years down the lane, those buildings have been left idle.
Okay, let me get some answers on this specific one you speak of. Let me speak to Michael Nsoa now. He's joining us by phone because the Zoom is not working quite as much. Mr. Nsoa, can you hear me now, sir?
Hello.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, sir, and thank you for agreeing to join us. Mr. Nochikoto, we'll come to you shortly. I just want us to hear Mr. Michael Nsoa on this very issue of the challenges. So let me start off on the point where our educationist in studio, Niamadi, left off, where he speaks of a number of E-blocks which have been left essentially to rot. Mr. Nsoa, was this part of the plan when you were rolling out your free SHS that you will abandon facilities that the country has pumped so much money into?
Yeah. No, you see, when somebody makes this allegation, I feel sad. They were only able to complete about 29 of them. So far, we've completed 40 of these. So why would somebody say that we had a plan to abandon them? Certainly, if the structure has not been started at all, and you look at the viability of the use of that structure, then of course you have to decide whether it is good to continue. All the schools are day schools, and if you cite a day school in the place where the total enrollment for all the children will not be more than 500, how useful is that structure?
So the argument to that, which we've just heard our educationists in studio speak of, will be that you don't necessarily have to be, I mean, he speaks of shuttle services elsewhere. I know, for instance, about Robert Gordon University. They have an Aberdeen campus. They have a campus in London as well. They have shuttle services that take students to and fro all the time. So, again, what is wrong with that? Why can't we make do with what we have? And then, is that not a better alternative than to suggest that because it's in a remote area, let's just let it go?
Look, let me give you a typical example.
Sure.
The first batch, the first list of completed E blocks included a school in Drobonso. Drobonso is, I won't call it a district, it's a village. Meanwhile, the building, which was uncompleted, is sited about 7 kilometers away from the district capital, Drobonso. So we took this list and used the list to allocate some students to this school. the students got there, and the building was not even completed, let alone access to the school. It took the Deputy Minister for Education, Dr. Aduchu, to go there and arrange to redistribute these students to the schools around Kwamine, Efijasi, and so on. So why don't they give us a proper picture and tell the truth, rather than say we abandon what?
So this is an isolated case you speak of.
Is
that the same for the 28 other schools you make mention of?
Look, Adansi area, we have Apeja and Pumsu, very close. The buildings were not completed. Apparently, the contractor, the building contractor, was awarded the contract at the same time as the contractor was to supply the furniture. I went there myself and saw that the contractor who was awarded the furniture had supplied the furniture even before the buildings were completed. And as at the time that we visited the place, the building was still not, those two buildings were still not completed. And the furniture has started rotting. So when people say that we abandoned, we didn't abandon anything. Any structure that was almost completed, we continue, and some are using.
Okay.
Go to Adobeura. Why would anybody go and build a school at Adobeura when the total population for DHS people was 150?
But essentially that community will grow, will it not?
What?
The community will grow. Today, perhaps it's 100 people. In the next 5 years, it could be 1,000 or more.
No, will it be viable for a whole school with a headmaster staff to take care of only 150 students?
So, some would say it's a visionary plan. It's a mid to long-term plan. So you don't just build...
No.
Okay.
No, because...
Let's hear your counter-argument, sir.
No, how would that DHS school grow when it is in a place where, I mean, they are all farmers. So how many children would they produce every year?
Sorry, I thought the free SHS policy was to have children of people like farmers have access to secondary education.
Don't compare free SHS and these new blocks. When we adopted the free SHS, we wanted every child that passes the BEC to be given a place to study. It is not about, and so we had plans to make sure that we expand many of the existing facilities so that more children will get access. And that meant expansion in the facilities meant more dormitories, more other facilities for these children. But you don't go and build a school in a village which doesn't have boarding facilities and expect the school to grow.
So because you say you are heading into another meeting, I just want us to wrap up with you shortly, and then you can go into that meeting. But so the 40 schools you make mention of, the 40-day schools now, what are we doing with them? Are we using them in any way? Because you mentioned a number of them which we are not using.
No, those ones were not completed when we took over.
So we are not using them. The other ones you speak of, we are not using them at all.
We have put, we are adding boarding facilities so that some of these schools can be used.
So as things stand now, they are not being put to use?
No, when you say they are not being put, because those buildings were not completed, so how do we put them to use?
So not even partially, not parts of it are good enough
for instance, let me give you a typical example. I had a visit from their head just this morning on the Sunyani Road, Kumasi Sunyani Road. There's a school which has become now actually it was one of the schools that was filled with the support of the World Bank, and we'll be able to add some boarding facilities, and now the schools are grown.
Okay.
The number is quite big.
Okay. So let me ask this real quick. We know this double track system was supposed to be a temporal measure. And that government said that within a few years it was keen on ending it.
No, we expected we said within between 5 to 7 years.
Okay, so now I'm hearing multiple numbers. The Deputy Minister of Information, whom we spoke to a short while ago, suggests 5 to 7 years. You are saying 5 to 10 years. Which do we go with?
5 to 7 years.
So we should ignore your 5 to 10 years.
Who said 5 to 10 years?
No, you mentioned, okay, so perhaps I didn't hear you right. That's fine. So if it's 5 to 7 years, is it 5 years or 5 to 7 from now, or 5 to 7 from the inception of the program?
From the time that we adopted the double track system.
Which was in 2017.
Yeah.
So between 2017, so that would mean technically by...
No, to be fair, 2017 we didn't have a double track. It was 2018 that we had a double track. That's where we had to look at our plans for adding more facilities so that we'll be able to absorb all the...
So give or take, by 2024, there will be no double track in Ghana.
Who said that?
Oh, I'm asking. I'm only doing the calculation based on the years you've given me.
Well, you can say that.
Unless your 7-year timeline is not realistic. You are just giving us some numbers.
Oh, how can you say it's not realistic? As you speak now, only about 300 are on double track. Many of the schools, in fact, including old schools, because they are not attracted to many of the candidates, they are not. They are still on the track, even though their numbers are very good.
So now again, I keep hearing communicators of government suggest 5 to 7, 5 to 7. So by which time, by which year will double track end?
No, it's because we have some challenges with funding.
Yes, we understand all the challenges. Let's factor everything in there. We need a specific timeline, sir.
As we speaking, in fact, we had a plan that by the end of last academic year, that is September, we would have abandoned the double track in about 5 to 600 schools. But we had challenges with the funding and many of the contractors who were
Mr. Soa, we have heard your challenges. Now we want a timeline.
I can't give timeline when sometimes you need the funding.
So then we can't go with this 5 to 7 years you are speaking of. If you can't give us a timeline, then we can't go with your 5 to 7 years either.
We can go with that 5 years because.
But that is a timeline. I mentioned that and you said no, that's not the case. But that is a timeline you are giving us.
We said between 5 to 7 years, and we are sticking to that.
Okay. Is there any plan to transition these final year students to the universities? And if there is, what is it? Can you share with us, sir?
No, but we are talking about CSHS.
Yes.
And definitely when they say they need to move on, that is if they want to move on.
Oh, they certainly have to.
Free SHS now has replaced basic education, meaning that is the minimum level of education everybody is entitled to. For beyond that, it is every opportunity should be given to the students to move on. So it is not something that what we are doing is to look increase the infrastructure in the tertiary institutions.
So we didn't plan on that early on when we were bringing the people in there in numbers.
No, we know more their admissions.
No, because if we are now beginning to think of putting up structures,
we are not now. Please,
okay.
Don't misquote me.
Okay, we just want to be sure what you are saying.
Of course, when you start any project, you know, by the time now we have over 400 students going in every year.
Yeah.
Unlike the previous when it was below 300. So definitely, you know, a lot of infrastructure is being undertaken because they are not going to absorb all of them at a time. But for now, the increases. If they were, the universities were admitting between 10 to 15,000. We expect it to go up between 15,000 and 20,000.
Okay, Mr. Soa, okay, I think we'll have to find time and bring you in studio because there's a lot more we want to speak to you about. For instance, if you say we are not hoping to have all of them in school and that there will be quite a chunk not making it to the universities, what would they be doing?
By all means, you must go to university. Okay. Who says that?
That's not what we are saying. But that's fine.
The nation has adopted the minimum level of education for every compulsory education.
Okay, that's
beyond
fine.
the compulsory education. We need to support people who want to, if they want to proceed, and therefore we need support by scholarship or something like that.
Great. Okay, that's fine.
Beyond the minimum level of education, anything that you do is to support.
Okay. All right. Mr. Nsua, thank you so much for your time today on Opposing Views. We will come back to you subsequently for some more insights on this. We are really grateful you made time to join us today. Nyamadi, you seem to be nodding at some point, smiling at other points, laughing practically at all at various points of that very conversation. We'll be coming back to Pius on Skype pretty shortly, though. I'm told they are rejigging a few things on the Skype. So once that is done, we'll come to him. But I need to hear the thoughts of you on everything that you've heard so far from Mr. Michael Nsua. He's the chairman of the GES Council, and I actually find it a bit problematic that we can't put a timeline to when we are going to end this double track system. But of course, let's hear you.
I mean, Mr. Nsua is a very fine gentleman who has been in the space for a very long time. I've been on a couple of interviews with him. Okay. I remember 3FM sometime, so I know him very well. And like I say, we all committed to the development of education in Ghana, and we only seek the good. We have to put it bluntly as it is.
Yes.
You know, education opens up communities. So his point that schools were built in villages and all that, that's not wash. I mean, if you go to developed countries, rural education is a huge thing. And rural education is where you find quality schools. I mean, when Achimota was built, when University of Ghana was built,
a forest.
It was a complete forest. I did a whole project on rural education and how we can transform rural education in Ghana. So where are we coming from and saying that schools are put in rural areas and there is nothing to it? When it takes only one bus to commute people from various places to center there, it opens up the community. Even Central University, until recently when they went to Miocho, the whole place was a bush. Now look at Miocho. To the extent that part of the lands were even taken back from them, from what they initially intend to build. I mean, look at Brekusu now, where Ashesi University is. I mean, try and see if you can even purchase a parcel of land around Brekusu, where Ashesi University is. So that idea that schools were put in villages, I mean, it's a waste of national resources. The money is for you and I. We need money to develop other sectors of the economy. So if money has gone into building schools and somebody says it's in the bush, so nothing can be done about it, I mean, what kind of thinking went into that? It can be used. It can be used. And that if that school has been put in use since its inception, it would have opened up those communities.
Okay. So it can be used, it must be used, certainly. That's your position.
And sorry, when I started with Article 25 of the Constitution, the second part, 25.2, talks about private participation. The other issue with free SHS is what happened to the private secondary schools. And this is a country where most part of our revenue goes into salary payments by government. Therefore, private participation must be encouraged in every means. Now we have most of those schools closed down. That was why some of us educationists were saying that if they had waited 1 year and drawn a roadmap into the free SHS, we wouldn't have had some of the problems that we had. Which means that you would have given those private schools the standards to meet, the standards of their teachers, the standards of their facilities, to roll them into the system. I mean, since 2008 up to now, they still haven't been involved. And we forced everybody into the public schools. Must everybody go to public school?
Not necessarily.
I mean, when you talk, they say that you don't choose for
the students.
But we have the opportunity to level it. We have the opportunity to level it so that the idea of people feeling bad for going to certain schools, this would have been
a good opportunity.
To level it.
That's fine. Now I want to, because we've dealt a bit with the issue of free SHS and the transition process. Once they transition to the tertiary institutions, now these two political parties, the NPP and the NDC, have come out with a lot of policies. I really want us to shift gear to that particular space. I don't know if Mr. Nochu Kotoi is still with us on phone. Mr. Nochu, can you hear me? Okay. His line has also dropped, but you are here and you have paid attention to a lot of things. Was it yesterday? Yes, that was yesterday. There were two announcements. The NPP saying one thing, the NDC saying another thing. So the Scholarship Secretariat is suggesting that they are now going to actually make a few things available to a number of free SHS beneficiaries who are now going into the system. The NDC is suggesting that previously they suggested they were going to pay part of the fees of first-year students. Now they are saying they're going to absorb the entire thing. When you sit back, you're an educationist, when you sit back and look at all the things you are seeing before you, how sustainable are both plans?
I mean, education is a public good. So that if we can support everybody to go to school, to acquire quality education, so be it. Okay, but we have to again look at some of these things, and I want to take the angle of the Scholarship Secretariat.
Sure.
And I'm saying this on the heels of what we've seen with the free SHS, and for me, it saddens my heart that private participation in free SHS was completely lost, and that led us hugely into part of the double track system, which we have to work against. If I was asked to advise, I would have said that the scholarship that has been announced by the Scholarship Secretariat must purely go to those who enters private universities. Okay, because public universities are already subvented, and if we don't take time, we're going to collapse private tertiary universities again, because you give scholarships to people and then they will go, because what are the merits? Is it going to be based on grade points? And we all know that in our part of the world, the first choice for university applicants are the public universities. Unlike America, where you talk about Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, MIT, which are all private. So if you live in America, your choice of tertiary, your preference is for a private. But if you are in our part of the world, your preference is for public. And we have to be careful, because already if you go to the NAB, the National Accreditation Board requirement for lecturer-student ratio, none of the public universities are meeting that ratio of 1:18, 1:25, and all those things. Look at the numbers that we have. Every effort must be made to reduce the numbers in that space. Because if you give scholarship into people to go into our public schools again, you're going to crowd that place, and the quality will be
none
poor.
of the manifestos of the two parties addresses this issue.
Yeah, because we are educationists. That's our area. We have studied it. We sleep it. We drink it. We dream it. Okay? So our reflections are into this. And that is what they have to learn to take from us when we tell them. Because it's not an issue of politics. It's not an issue of saying that we will do what we want, when it is the people's money. You see, educational quality is very important. We have to build quality. And you can't build quality with amassing people in one place. I mean, given the chance, everybody would want to go to particular universities in Ghana because of whatever the prestige or the name that comes with it.
Let me hear the views of Pius Enam Hajide, who has rejoined us via Zoom. Mr. Hajide, can you hear me now? I'm sure you can. Okay, if you can.
Yes, I can hear you. Unfortunately, I lost the link at the point.
Yeah, so it happens. It's one of those things. But the point is this. A lot of people are applauding your government, the NPP government, for this initiative to try and, as much as possible, support a lot of people who may be coming out of the various secondary schools into the tertiary, those who may not be in a position to pay. Fantastic idea, some have said. But an educationist here is pointing us to the fact that already we have issues at the various public universities. They are unable to even meet the teacher-to-student ratio numbers as espoused by the National Accreditation Board. Now, would you not rather put these subventions to the private universities who are already, charging so much, and so a lot of people who are unable to make it to these universities cannot even have access to them? So what stops us then from considering these ones and offering them a bit of subvention so that they can absorb the other numbers? Because already for the public tertiary institutions, there's a bit of subvention, so it's relatively cheaper going there.
Well, in due course, but I think that my respected colleague in your studios have made some fundamental commentary that I would indulge you to allow me to respond to.
Sure.
I think that some of them have been dealt with by Mr. Soa. He makes the point, for instance, that huge investments by the state have been left abandoned. And he was speaking with respect to the e-blocks. I mean, with disrespect, with disagree.
Okay, Mr. So Pius, this line, it's relatively unstable at this point. Okay, Pius, yeah, we can hear you now.
We are not,
yeah.
Unless that we are not doing our own independent checks and we are falling for NDC propaganda. The facts are that by the time this administration took over, 29 e-blocks were completed. This administration has completed 30 of the e-blocks. So in fact, we have completed more e-blocks than the previous administration. So the suggestion that the project was abandoned is misleading and
let's be specific. I think the issue was about whether or not they are being put to use, not as to whether or not the project has been abandoned. Are they being put to use?
Well, that was a point he made. That was a point of investments.
No, but I want to know. I'm asking you: abandoned. are those facilities being put to use currently?
Answer your question. I will answer your question because there is an honest answer to those questions.
Sure, we are running out of time. Actually, that's why.
But before we do that, okay. The part about the utilization of the e-blocks, the answer is that yes, indeed, those e-blocks are being used. There are several e-blocks that the schools are using. There are several e-block schools that are in session as we speak.
Okay.
Some of them have even had to be converted into boarding schools. Even though the promise that we were made was that 50 of these e-blocks will be completed every year. By the end of the 4th year, only 29 were said. We have not correct.
Pius, I would want you to respond to the issue of the scholarship secretariat and the suggestion to have the subventions to the private universities rather.
Well, I think that we are a pro-free market party.
Okay.
And so we don't have a problem supporting the private space. There is history of us. We are the party we are the free market party. We are we support private initiative. No doubt about that. But we also are focused on creating opportunities within the public space. And so when we are talking about tertiary education,
such opportunities already exist. The opportunities don't exist for the private universities. That is why there's this proposal. Is the government going to consider this proposal?
Even in the public space, we are expanding access. For instance, today, teacher training colleges are degree awarding.
Pius, I just want I need an answer so I can wrap up the show. Is the government willing to consider the suggestion of educationists as regard the scholarship secretariat proposal to give a bit of subvention? Are you going to consider the private universities? Because they say you did not consider private universities at the secondary level. Let us not run into another ditch. That's the warning.
I have not interrogated that proposal. That proposal must be integrated within the realm of the Constitution.
That's fine.
Of the land. What does the Constitution say relative to
all of that?
So we have to take time to interrogate it. It's not a simple, straightforward yes or no answer.
Okay. Pius, thank you so much for agreeing to join us today. Pius Enamajide is Deputy Information Minister. Joined us with some views on this very subject matter, as well as Michael Nsoa, Chairman of the Ghana Education Service Council. And anyway, there's a lot we have to say, but I think we've run out of time. We really have to find a way to bring back this conversation so we can wrap up this. Niamadi has also been with us in studio. Mr. I know you have a lot to say, but it's very unfortunate we've run out of time. We'll try and bring back this conversation. But my name is Kwabena Chencha. Many thanks for watching Opposing Views today. Up next, business updates with Kwabena Mayor. Thank you for watching.